It's now time to tie everything together. Now that you notice you're scratching, you can replace that behaviour with something non-damaging. Hopefully, the exercise of logging your scratching means that you've much greater insight both into how much you're scratching, but also the circumstances around it. You can use this newfound insight to create a plan and reverse it. If you think about it, you can really break a scratch into two separate actions. The first is moving to scratch yourself, and the second is the actual scratch. Breaking it down like this means that you can target each part of a scratch in order to get it under control. So let's look at the movement. This might happen consciously because you're feeling itchy, or it could be completely reflexive. We'll begin by interrupting that automatic movement, and a lot of the time, this is enough to stop you scratching. Catching yourself and holding back. If you really are feeling itchy, there are a couple of techniques to help out. To deal with the movement to scratch, you're going to use what's known as a competing behaviour that makes it impossible to do it. Then, if you need it, there's a non-damaging alternative to the scratch itself that gives you some relief without making the skin worse. So 1, stop the habit, and 2, deal with the itch. Now let's look at the competing behaviour first. This is about preventing the unthinking scratching when you move your hand towards your arm or your face without even thinking about it. As soon as you become aware that you're moving to scratch, clench your fists and count to 30. Whether you're feeling itchy or not, this will prevent you from scratching and reinforce an opposite behaviour that makes it less likely you'll do it in future. Don't clench your fists too hard, and if it helps, do some mindful breathing as you do the count. As we covered earlier, there are other ways of scratching, so feel free to be creative with ways of preventing yourself from doing things that don't require your hands. For example, if you rub your back against a wall, try laying down on your front. It's about finding an alternative behaviour that makes it impossible to do the action. Most of the time, after those 30 seconds have passed, if you had an urge, it will have gone. Sometimes though, the itch is more persistent. In this case, we need a non-damaging alternative. This is an alternative behaviour that will relieve the itch without damaging your skin. Try using a fingernail to gently press into wherever's itching for a few seconds, and you'll find that the itch disappears. Alternatively, you can softly pinch your skin. It doesn't really matter what it is, but there are two key points. It can't damage your skin, and it must be deliberate. To recap, there are two parts to a scratch, the movement towards it and the scratch itself. For the movement, you clench your fists and count to 30. For the itch, you press in your nail or you gently pinch the area so the itch goes away but you don't damage your skin. Earlier on in the program, we looked at your scratch factors, the situations in which you're most likely to scratch. These are the times that are going to be particularly difficult to deal with, so revisit those factors now and think about the plans that will help you handle these different situations. Between having a plan and then acting quickly as soon as you're in that situation, you should be able to avoid it from turning into the scratching fits that you might have had in the past. A couple of other things that you might find helpful. One is mindful breathing. There's a lot about this online, but it's just about being conscious of your breath and really focusing your attention when you're feeling itchy, and perhaps when you're doing the competing response. You should find that this calms you and it really helps you concentrate on what you're doing. Another thing that other people have found useful are fidget toys. So these are things that you have in your hand you can play with, but prevent you from scratching. You might have seen a fidget spinner before, or even a bracelet with some beads on it. While you're turning those beads in between your fingers, you can't be scratching. And you can get creative with this too. If there's anything you can think of to keep your hands busy to prevent you from scratching, then just use whatever works for you. Now that you're mastering the habit reversal, the goal is to get your scratching down to a level where it's no longer damaging your skin. Every scratch avoided puts you one stop closer to healed skin and saves you from feeling the need to scratch in future. This might seem impossible, but chances are you've already noticed that you're scratching far less, so you're really well on your way already.